Dr. Alex Skanovich. I'm a cardiologist in New York City. I was a mathematician. Medicine came relatively late in my life in college. No one in my family is a physician. So I grew up in Russia. I came here when I was 18 years old in 1975. It was challenging because of the time when it took place. This was pre-internet and pre-globalization, so we were refugees and we were unprepared. We did not have nearly enough information to make intelligent choices. We had a bit of sponsorship, a bit of help, for which we're of course very grateful, but it was pretty much a sink or swim situation, and so we had to figure out how to integrate ourselves into this very generous but still complex society and culture on our own. There wasn't a community then to turn to for guidance, so it was a lot of self-discovery and a little bit of good luck. So I was very fortunate to start my life in America as an Ivy League undergraduate, and this was luck. I had not taken any standardized tests. It was too late. I had done very well in high school, but it took a leap of faith on the part of Columbia University to take me and one other person that year. We were the first two undergraduates from our immigration to travel that road, and we did well, and lots of people followed us. But there was not enough. In retrospect, especially by modern standards, there wasn't enough information and mentorship for decision making. And it's not an uncommon immigrant or refugee story. America is, again, a very generous country, as I've discovered, but you need to be in the right places at the right time, and you need to make your own way. It's permissive, it's encouraging, it's enabling in many ways, but there's plenty to do for the individual. I remember actually taking my admissions letter to the to whichever office you took it then, and thanking them in my very limited English and saying that I didn't have enough money to pay for it, and they laughed and said, "Of course we know." But I remember putting zeros on the financial aid application everywhere. We didn't have anything, and they laughed and gave me a $5,000 scholarship check. I felt very, very rich. And medicine offered an opportunity to continue my education and to develop skills that I knew were going to be useful, continue to learn and continue to mature, and all of that played out even better than I expected. You do not become a physician for many, many years. So medical training is all about transforming an ordinary person into a slightly different persons. Medicine requires sequestration, requires inurement, requires habituation, requires discovery. Even teenagers who think they want to be doctors, when they go through this process, are likely to have to make many, many discoveries for themselves as to what it means to be a doctor. And that's the reason why it takes 4 years. That's the reason why it's separate from let's say, other educational entities. So medical school is a separate process. I was very fortunate to get into a very high quality program that Harvard and MIT still run together in medicine, and spent 4 years in that environment, and then came to Cornell, New York Hospital for my internship and residency. I had to speak to a group of retirees in Brooklyn a few years ago, and I made a slide that tried to quantify what it takes to become a doctor, or in my case, what it took for me to become the doctor that I am. And I indicated that it took 15 years, if you count college, medical school, and all the subsequent training. It's 15 years of dedicated commitment to learning, and then approximately $1.5 million in direct and indirect costs to become, let's say, an interventional cardiologist that I became. So currently the way entry into this licensed profession is set up, it requires an outsized investment on the part of the future doctor, which the doctor feels entitled to recoup in terms of earnings later on, which causes a great deal of tension in terms of value assignment in medicine. It was many, many years later that financial rewards arrived. So postgraduate training, for instance, in medicine was then, and I don't know what interns and residents are paid now, and fellows, but then we worked for pennies. If you compare our earnings as interns and residents to, let's say, compensation that my housemates in Cambridge, Massachusetts received when they graduated from Harvard Law School, we were not even in the same kind of conversation. And this is before you talk about Wall Street or entrepreneurial opportunities. So medicine is a service industry, and we are probably the last generation of physicians who evaluate this career choice in terms of earning opportunities that it offers. I acquired an accountant when my first paycheck arrived, and was more preoccupied with paying for expenditures that were related to improved quality of life circumstances. It wasn't until much too much later that I became aware of money management as a normal responsibility for an adult. As a physician, I achieved a certain level of success as a transactional physician. So I would meet my patient not infrequently on the day that they were going to have a procedure that I was going to perform. And I would introduce myself to them that day, say, look, I'm Dr. Skanovich. I will have the privilege of doing your procedure. Do you have any questions? And they would talk to me for a few minutes, and then I would do the procedure and tell them how it turned out, the findings and results, shake their hand, see them the following morning. Then they had to stay in the hospital overnight, make sure that they're okay, and then write a letter to their doctor, and that was it. I was never to see them again. So it was a transactional experience, a great deal of responsibility on my part in terms of appropriateness of the procedure and then execution of the procedure, but it didn't go beyond that. I did not have to partner with the patient in any way. That was the responsibility of the referring doctor. Now I'm a relationship-based physician, so when patients come to see me, the overwhelming majority of them have chronic, long-term conditions that they need to live with, and I need to help them live with and manage. And so it's a very different connection, and I've learned a great deal about agency, what being an agent, a doctor or an investment advisor or an attorney or an accountant or barber involves in terms of organizing interactions with your client. So in wealth management and in virtually every aspect of my life, I try to be relationship-based, and it's a matter of choosing, as a client now, potential agents that you would want to build a relationship with. And once you find people you think are qualified and suitable based on your understanding of what you're looking for, then you have to make an effort as a client now to create a mutually beneficial long-term partnership with them so that outcomes of that collaboration are good for you and also good for them. Certain things should be taught ahead of time so that people are not shocked that they need to, for instance, manage their health. So I actually deliver this spiel to my patients all the time. I try to present their having to manage their bodies as a completely normal part of the journey, not a bad fortune, for instance, or anything that should be causing anxiety over long periods of time. It's something you learn to do, organize, and then do as a matter of fact. So money management, of course, in families where money is an important part of their narrative, generational transfer of knowledge takes place. So fathers introduce their sons to professionals who then become partners for them in making decisions about spending money, earning money, investing money, managing money, living with money. People are taught things that might have been useful several generations ago. People are not taught things that are useful today. And that's where advisors become very important. And so you need to learn when you're a young adult, when you're middle-aged, when you're old. My God, you need to learn. So I am actually in the business of teaching old people how to be old. They teach me, of course, but I then share with them what I consider to be best practices. And it's amazing the gratitude that that generates, because these people have been left to their own devices during the most challenging part of their journey. So prolific, or people like prolific, ideally should be very, very central to human development in this society, not only in terms of introducing certain challenging statistical and mathematical concepts, but also simply in terms of psychological inurement when it comes to decision making involving money. And people would be making better decisions. Otherwise, we're extremely susceptible to manipulation and are very afflicted by limitations of the biological design when it comes to choice making. So integrity is the defining attribute of an agent, more so than competence, because an agent who possesses integrity typically would be aware of his or her own limitations. So, and it's an idealized conceptual construct, but an ideal agent would only represent his client up to the point where his competence is in question, and then acknowledge his limitation and engage others with complementary competence. So that's what I do as a physician, for instance. I never try to overreach and do things that I do not believe I can do well enough. And I'm very comfortable with that. Despite all of my accomplishments and all my credentials, I do not represent myself as an omniscient, omnipotent agent, even in cardiology. Prolific involves, as far as I'm concerned, two people who bring very complementary personalities and very complementary skill sets. There is maturity, experience, and a certain dignitas, and then there is energy and investment in long-term future coming together. Prolific came when I was already a middle-aged person, well beyond middle age even, already had experience with good and bad decisions in terms of my personal finance. I already had other relationships in that space. And so they face the challenge of overcoming the distance that exists between strangers in matters that are important. And they're good at it. And they recommended themselves, both in terms of their track record, their understanding of clients like me. They specialize in healthcare and healthcare professionals. There's they're imponderables, the way people present themselves, the way people talk, the way people outline and formulate their philosophy as agents. I am reasonably experienced at talking to people and listening to people, and also understanding how relationships may need to be constructed. And over time, we have become comfortable together to make some decisions that are important for me and my family. And I'm comfortable with their representation of me personally and my family going forward.